Make sure my do not disturb is still on. It is. And Daniel, this is a podcast with Jasmine Marie.
Huh?
So, um, welcome, Jasmine, to the Anti Aging Uncensored podcast. I am so honored you are joining us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invite.
You're quite welcome. We've been following some of the work you've been doing, and I feel like this is so important to talk about now more than even a year ago. So before we dive in more about the work you are doing, I want to start with some basics to get some sort of important definitions out to the women that are listening to this. Can you define what is breath work?
Yeah. So, breath work is a somatic tool and it really helps to heal trauma that's occurring in the body. Scientifically, like when you go beyond I hate woo woo, but the spiritual way we relate to breath work. But the parasympathetic nervous system is what helps counterbalance our stress, our anxiety, and breath work helps amplify that aspect of our nervous system to help calm us down, relieve any stress, and also really work to usher out any stagnant energy in our body and trauma from our body as trauma embeds itself and the memories of trauma energetically embed itself into our nervous system. And that's why we can have gone through a situation that was traumatic and think of it, and our body automatically has a response, right? We're not in the situation, we're no longer in that place, but our body is responding like so,
Like it's
right?
right back there.
Exactly. So breath work really works to relieve a lot of that, I would say, energetic gunk or congestion.
So, trauma is an interesting word itself. I, my own perception over the years of growing up and listening to it, I align it with something quite severe, things like abuse or accidents or war or rape or anything that is highly traumatic. But in today's world, I the news is traumatic.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I imagining if utilizing that word more commonly about the things that are causing trauma or agitation or things, and it ultimately creates what in the simplistic way,
Yeah.
stress on the body, correct?
Yeah. I think sometimes when people hear trauma, it's like you mentioned, a very severe event, a car accident, home invasion or something of that nature where it's like it was big, it was
Hmm.
monumental, but psychological and emotional trauma occur as well in those kind of situations. Not only those kind of situations, but watching the news, learning of different histories within your family, trauma that's been passed down through your DNA, epigenetics. That is the study of scientists being able to see trauma impacted into your DNA, and then that gets passed down. And so
Wow, I
it's,
did not know that. That is good.
yeah, it's
That's
fascinating
good.
how we don't just deal with our traumas, but familial traumas and generational traumas as well.
That's great. So, I want to uh, I want to come back around to how we use breath work in our daily lives, as well as the benefits of it. But I want to first have you share about the amazing company that you started. You started Black Girls Breathing, and I'm really interested in the niche that you've focused on and the work you are doing and why.
Yeah. So, Black Girls Breathing is a safe space for Black women to actively manage their emotional and mental health through breath work and community. And in our work, what's been very important to me is making that work accessible, especially over the past year with COVID. We've heard the rates, we've heard which communities have been most impacted by COVID. Black communities and Indigenous communities. And that's shown up in our work, right? So women losing jobs, having to bury loved ones, and spouses, children, parents. And that is, you can hear about it on the news, but when you're connecting that to specific faces in your community, it hits really different. And so for me, it was so important for us to find and test and eventually, keep forever a business model where we can make the work accessible, be it from no cost to our regular cost, $25 a virtual session, and open up an opportunity for Black women to feel seen and to feel nurtured consistently with our work. So I started that because of once I went through my training, I noticed the lack of Black and other practitioners of color that were getting, their certification and then going back and bringing the tool to the communities that could really use this and need it the most. When you look at the rates just in the US, those who are most impacted by stress, chronic stress, depression, and anxiety is Black and Latinx communities. And so knowing that is one of the biggest fuels for why I started Black Girls Breathing and my own personal journey of healing through this tool and being able to provide it to other Black women and people who look like me was so important for me.
I know when the pandemic started that you, like most businesses, you pivoted, correct? You had to sort of reimagine how you were delivering it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would see what's funny is my entire journey is so spiritual. Like it's so spiritual. I mean, woke up one day after having practiced breath work for 4.5 years and was clear I need to get trained, got trained, woke up, was very clear that I need to start Black Girls Breathing. I did it. Um, Same thing with this business model. I was like, we need to make it sliding scale. And at the time, we weren't necessarily in a position to do that, to make it accessible. And so I was once, I'm pretty sure it was I'm drawing a blank, but when someone was murdered by a police officer in Minneapolis, I'm pretty sure it's so sad that it's like, which one is it?
I
Um,
know.
yeah, I was just like, drawing a blank. But that week, we had a rush of allies who were like, how do we gift sessions? How do we support your community? We know that Black people need this tool. We know Black women need this tool, and bought up so many sessions for us to gift back to Black women. And I was just like, there's something to this. We need to sustain this. We need this work to be accessible forever, So
Mhm.
again, had a thought. We had a May session where slots were donated. Then I woke up and beginning of June, I was just like, no, I need to dream bigger. How can I scale this and make it even more accessible? We launched our crowdfunding campaign where we asked allies and different wellness organizations and beyond wellness organizations to pour into our mission so we could continue to make our work accessible while we had the runway with those funds to figure out how we would sustain this long term and get the corporate partnerships we needed, so forth. So it was very much spiritual and listening to that gut and inkling that we pivoted. And in the time, I mean, the timing, we always knew our work was important, but it was just more people began to see how important it was and supported us.
Yeah, it's great because uh, mental stresses are rampant this last year, in this last election cycle, all the stuff that people were carrying anxieties around with them. And I think the awareness around what populations were creating were exacerbated by all of this. And so one of the areas that we've been interested in is heart disease. And heart disease, in that heart disease is the number one killer of women. And so, but to hear how it's affecting Black communities more than it is affecting white communities. That doesn't mean it's not affecting both, but to really address that and to call it out, I think is extremely important. So, I love what you're doing. So let's talk a little bit about the mental health aspect of stress, I guess, and what chronic stress is doing. Are there, you know, things that women should be on the lookout for? And I definitely want to dive into what the practice is and what physically you're doing. But if we look at the background of that, how do we understand what those stresses are doing to our bodies?
Yeah, I would say grounding that question down even to what I've, seen in my practice, not just in Black Girls Breathing, but making space, in corporations and working with their employees during this time, um, is the impact of grief on our mental health. And that is an aspect of um, stress, right? And grief shows up differently. Some people think it's just always crying, but it's agitation, it's short, being really short. It can be depression, like different aspects of grief that don't necessarily have to do with a physical death, but grieving old ways of being, old sense of community, old way of operating in your day to day. And that has been, I think the biggest thing that collectively we've been dealing with from a mental health perspective. Just noticing in my
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I joke about women being set in their ways. Like the older we get, the more set in the ways we become, and have a hard time sort of breaking away from that. But this is a really good example of that. I remember even using, it was so interesting when I was going through IVF. They said, the doctor was like, you may have to grieve the loss of your fertility, of your ability to have children. You may have to grieve that. And it just like hit me really, really hard. I never really thought about grieving it. I just thought, oh, it's done. But I never thought of the impacts on our minds. So great that it's just so interesting.
It's a
So
good doctor too, because most, yeah, I don't know, that's a great
yeah,
doctor.
they're just
Kudos.
like, you're old. You're too old, lady. Um, yeah, no, it was definitely emotional, and I just thought, okay. But I do think there is something around training our understanding, training ourselves to understand what we're experiencing rather than just letting it shock our systems. I may not be clear of that, but
No, I completely can. Yeah.
yeah, like when something happens, being able to recognize it as this is a grief, this is being able to identify it and having that uh, the stigma ar- lifted so we can talk about it, and even not just talk about it to ourselves.
Yeah.
So don't be embarrassed about these
Yeah.
things.
I what you just described in my practice or when I'm facilitating, I name that as witnessing. So allowing yourself to witness whatever's going on without the judgment, without I should, because what ends up happening is there's stress from the stress, right? So I can recall a time when we had so much going on in our business and I was stressed out, and I felt like I was even more stressed because I was stressed at the fact that I had stress. And it's just like it's very normal for me to experience stress at this time. Can I accept that? It's like, yeah, it's normal for me to express. And immediately you just feel the airiness and space in your system when you can just, yeah, this it's okay for me to feel stressed right now. And you're not so closed in on this thing that shouldn't be there. And you allow yourself to sit in a place of not so much judgment and just
Sadness.
witnessing. Yeah.
Like, it's okay to be sad. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There's that movie. I don't know why this movie stuck with me. I actually didn't love the movie as a whole, but there was a great concept. It was Waiting to Exhale.
Okay.
Okay. Whitney
Yep,
Houston,
with Angela Bassett.
Angela Bassett. It was great. And I loved it. So they used Waiting to Exhale as when you meet the love of your life and you're there, you just can exhale. Like there's this huge relief of and release of stress. I'm using my arms very big. But there was this huge thing. And I remember there was a scene where like either, I don't know who was dancing. Whitney will say was dancing with what she thought, and she just was able to exhale. Like I've been waiting to exhale. And I used it this year around a lot of things where I was like, I can finally breathe. I can
Yeah.
finally breathe. Like this is such a relief. Like I've been carrying this for so long. Little kitten. I've been carrying this around for so long that I can finally breathe. And I do think that I think it's such an interesting I mean, they were using it in love, but I use it all the time now to like I've been waiting for this moment just to like be okay with it. So yeah. So a lot of people still believe that, and I know a lot of them, that meditation, and we're calling it breath work, you can call it meditation, you call it a lot of different things, that we need to be like cross-legged, palms up, and chanting or whatever. And I just, what is your response when people are like, so is this like a chanting thing or?
I my concept of meditation and mindfulness is so custom, right? I'm like, it doesn't have to be this, like you said, I'm lying on the bed, I'm committing to 30 minutes of breath work and I have to do. It's like, what about not eating your food and not having anything playing in the background, not on your phone, but being so in tune with that one sense that you're engaging with, touch and taste?
Mm.
What about looking out your window and watching the bird while you're drinking your tea and just being in that moment? That's meditation. That's mindfulness. It's a sense of being present with where you are and what you're doing and allowing yourself to be there, even amidst interruptions, right? Because I think people also have this perception that I'm only able to do it when I have a day slowed down. I'm only able to do it when it's just like my practice is one where I can find the time to do it amidst.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's what I would say too. That concept of meditation has to look a certain way.
And you do something, and this is what I can't wait to ask you about this. I've been waiting. Talk about a breathwork circle
Mm.
and what that is, because we always kind of think of these things as doing it alone or doing it in our own time. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So even the imagery that comes up when I think of circle, it's like the lines face in and everything comes back to one. So in human form, a circle, it's one where we're able to see each other and feel connected and reflect back to each other and feel a sense of community. And we have these circles online now since everything's virtual with
Mhm.
COVID, but they've been a way for my community to see each other, to not feel alone. I think the number one thing, I believe this for everything, the number one thing that people struggle with when they're going through things is I am alone and something is wrong with me.
Oh, yes.
If you can get to the place in your journey and work with this with compassion, that there's nothing wrong with you, I don't care how you experience something and what your reaction is, the inner knowing if there's nothing wrong with you, then that gives you enough space to move through situations with the compassion that you need to actually move through it and not feel stuck because you're not doing it a certain way. So all that to say,
So
in the
good.
circles, we're able to see each other and see I'm not alone. Nothing's wrong with me. I'm hearing the same things that people are experiencing. I'm sad for no reason. Hey, all that's grief. I'm sad. I feel down and my energy, grief. It's okay. We're all experiencing that. So those are our circles.
I love that. And have you been so let me rephrase this. If someone was wanting to start their own breath practice, and one of the things that I love you said is just quietly looking out the window and just looking like I immediately turned my head to my window and was like, why don't I ever do that? It's right here and there's some really pretty trees to look at. Like, what am I doing? But if someone was actually going to, start their own practice of this and didn't have access to you, although it sounds like everyone can have access, but what what would you suggest? What would be your like words of wisdom? Is it something we do in the car? How many minutes? I'd love
And
to hear your
that
thought.
part, it's all up to you. And some people don't like that because they're like, tell me what to do. Right. But reflecting,
Yeah, we love to
you are
do's.
your own, yeah, you are your own healer. You can do breath work and being intentional with your breathe or just tapping in. There's something that happens when you just turn attention into your body that it just starts to slow down. It's like, the attention I was looking for, right? You can do that in your car on the way to an errand, while driving, being intentional with your breath at night, winding yourself down in the morning, at your desk when you're feeling stressed out and you just need to take a second. You can do this practice throughout your
Mhm.
day, and it doesn't have to be, could be 3 intentional inhales and exhales. And that's enough to reset you. And it's all about really tuning into your body. Your body will let you know if you need something longer or intensive, so just being more
Mhm.
intentional, yeah, and listening to yourself to figure that out.
So I'm very practical. Like I want to know what are the benefits, right? So I want to know when I'm going to put this retinol on my screen, what's it going to do for me or whatever, whatever it is. What is this macaroni and cheese going to do for me? And I'll know exactly what the answer is. So I was looking at the Cleveland Clinic stats that 48% of Black women have some form of heart disease. And that includes both heart disease and stroke. And we know that heart disease is the number one killer, as I mentioned earlier. What are there direct correlations yet that have been proven, not only on the health side and also on the mental health
Yeah.
side? Like, can we draw some
Yeah.
direct lines?
Yeah, there's been many studies, grateful that there have been as precedents for us to draw this information from. But when we look at most of the physical challenges and ailments that impact Black women, the common denominator is chronic stress. Not just stress sometimes, but it's to a point where the cortisol levels are so high and sustained that that's their way of living, right? You live in a heightened state. So continuously over time, that has an impact on the body, of course, right? When you're so stressed, you've ever been to the doctor and you're like, I have a rash, this is happening, and they're like, stress. You got to do something about it. Your body is
Wow.
responding.
Mhm.
And so, yes, there have been direct correlations with death from breast cancer, ovarian cancer, strokes, heart disease. We have a chart that actually sits on our deck that shows the different ailments that are directly correlated with chronic stress that impact Black women more than any other group. And it's like, so if we can get to the root of the chronic stress, and in a way that it's before you get to the place where you're in the hospital, before you're even more stressed out from the bills that come from that. As we know, Black women are underinsured, they don't.
Yes.
So it's just like before we get there, if we can address the root, we'd be solving so many issues.
Yeah, and it's incredible. And, you and I, we talked a little bit offline beforehand about stuff that was going on with my son and the stress. And you mentioned the cortisol levels and things like that. I can only imagine. This is rampant everywhere. And I mean, I love that you're, serving a community that needs it so much. Would it be too much to ask if we could do a minute of breath work together?
Why don't we do like 30 seconds?
Okay, 30 seconds works for me.
Or let's just do an exercise and it'll last how long it lasts.
Yeah.
Okay, so just really want to close your eyes, feel the seat of where you are. Just really connect to your body and your body touching whatever object is supporting you right now. And as you just begin to tune into your body, is when your body responds. with slowing down just by tuning in and giving some attention. You can just feel yourself sinking into your chair even further, allowing yourself to feel supported in this moment and supported in the decision to slow it down, tune back inward. Just noticing what our bright breathing is doing right now, observing what our normal breathing is doing, giving and showing our lungs some gratitude. Thank you, lungs. Thank you, brain. Thank you, heart, for feeling, even when it feels like way too much. We can do a breathwork pattern that we're going to be inhaling through our mouth and exhaling out of our mouth. And on the exhale, we're going to release anything that we feel in our body audibly with a sigh. So our body naturally promotes that reaction when we're going through something that feels difficult. We'll just, so tapping into that. And mouth is wide open. Inhaling, allowing our lungs to expand. Exhale with a sigh. Inhaling through the mouth. Exhaling with a sigh. Keep it going, and we really feel our lungs and our stomach area rise on the inhale. Feeling our stomach collapse and hug our ribs on the exhale and the sigh. You're feeling extra frustrated or not really tuned into your body, scattered, uncertain. It's just a great practice to tap back into your body, find your center, remind yourself that you have the ability to create some calm at any moment you find yourself in, and connect to your body and your breath. Let's do 3 more of these. One more, make it count. And when you're done, really take note of what you created in this moment with your breath. And when you're ready, lovingly and gently open your eyes and meet me back in this moment.
I've never breathed like that before. Ever. It was actually odd to breathe in through your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's great. I love that. That it's a different type of practice, breath practice than I would have thought. You know, I've taught my son to like breathe in through his nose and exhale through his mouth. And yeah, really good. Well, I just love what you're doing. And I know you launched something new. It's called the House of BGB, Black Girls Breathe. And I'd love you to talk about that a little bit, about the groundbreaking work you guys are doing.
Yeah, I'm so excited. We're using all of my toolbox, so to speak, in this vision. This in my past life, I was in brand development, lots of market research, really from a consumer standpoint, but was exposed after I launched my marketing firm to different aspects of research. And I'm really tapping back into that past to use what we found in our Black Girls Breathing work and being able to use different ways to collect data, to have that information to show the gaps that exist for Black women and mental health care, for Black women and healthcare in general. And we know that companies don't move without data, right? So, how can we impact insurance policies? How can we shift and be able to impact what research is available on this demographic so certain solutions can be made, whether that's different techniques of, I don't like to say alternate medicine, but non-traditional medicine,
Mm-hmm.
and even, traditional medicine, right? When we think about what's happening right now, the COVID-19 vaccine and the Black community's response to that and hesitancy to take it,
Right.
what information can we gather as a community to then be able to influence how this virus is impacting our community the most deaths, and dispel the myths and the rightful myths, as there's a lot of hesitancy in the Black community towards the medical field, given the history there, and being able to have the tools to influence different industries with our work. So House of BGB is founded on those principles of research, and it's a research and creative agency. And we're using that work and our ability to partner with companies on this and other aspects of agency work to sustain Black girls breathing being accessible forever. So that's how we've answered and the call of how do we continue to make our work accessible.
I just love that. I think the work that you are going to provide for brands is so invaluable.
Mom,
you're right.
Dad,
Oh, I'm sorry. One sec. Brody, welcome home. I love you. Thank you for coming home.
I was just,
Daniel,
I
you'll be
just,
cutting this.
I just heard the rumblings from the washing machine, and I have to tell you something.
Okay.
You forgot a lipstick with a laundry.
I forgot something.
A lipstick.
I found a lipstick and I ruined it. I ruined
Yeah.
some clothes.
Yeah.
Okay, baby. Thank you, Brody, for telling me. Thank you. I just need 5 more minutes and I'm done. Okay. I love you.
I love
I'm like, stop. Sorry, Daniel. I'll let him know about that. But I'm going to say this one more time because I totally agree with you that, businesses do not, and they do not, hospitals don't buy new equipment unless they find not only does it help, but does it save them money and does it make it more efficient and things like that. So here is the perfect example of you sort of filling a need for these brands to reach their customers or future customers and know how to address them and know how to fill needs. So I love that, and I honestly can't even wait to hear like what comes of that in the next couple of years, because I think the work you're going to be doing is really invaluable. And I personally hope that when we launch our subscription box, which is for women to feel great about themselves no matter what their age, that this will be a cause that we get involved with. And I know we're going to talk about it, but I can't help but mention it, that is so important to me, that we be able to give back. And this feels like such an appropriate area. So one question for you before we head off, and that is, what would you tell your younger self in regards to your health
Oh, in regards to my health,
or your mental health, your being?
my being, I would just tell her, I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of her. Yeah, I'm really proud of her.
That's great. That's a great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everyone everyone wants to feel that. It is very, having people feel proud of you is it's deep.
Yeah, and that she's okay. Like, she's okay. You're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine. So how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so on socials, you can follow our work at Black Girls Breathing. On Instagram, I'm that girl underscore JMARIE, Jane with
Okay.
and if you ever want to reach out about our work in any way and getting connected, you can email us at info@blackgirlsbreathing.com. And yeah, those are the main ways to stay connected and stay abreast with what we're doing.
Well, we plan to keep in touch with you and the work that you're doing and follow the work you're doing. And for those interested, we will definitely have links on our show notes page of that stuff. And one of the things I'd love to include is you talked about a chart in your deck about the effects of stress. And I think that that would be insanely valuable because we all want proof. We all want to know what we're doing and how it impacts us. And, we're busy, everybody, a lot of busy women in the world and taking care of lots and lots of things. And we want to know that the time we put in for something, even if it's something that we hear is good for us, actually is good for us. So, and I'm so glad that we are that you have that. So hopefully we'll be able to share that as well. Jasmine, I can't thank you enough. The beginning of great things to come for you, and hopefully we can keep in touch and bring lots of good meaning to people's lives. So
Well,
thank you.
so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.